A new season of Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, springs to life this weekend at verdant Sonoma Raceway in Northern California. Located some 30 miles north across the Golden Gate Bridge from downtown San Francisco, a lap around Sonoma is no trolley ride. The twists and dips of this challenging 12-turn, 2.5-mile layout mirror the famous winding path of Lombard Street. But here, the turns come at you in excess of 150 miles per hour. 4 continental championships, Australia, Asia, Europe, and North America, make up the SRO's Global Fanatec GT Championship. The American calendar begins here with stops at some of the country's most iconic courses, culminating with the Indianapolis 8-hour in October.
There is nothing quite like race one of a brand new season. Hello from Sonoma Raceway, where our event weekend is protected by CrowdStrike. My name is Amanda Busick, and it is time for the 2024 kickoff of the Fanatec GT World Challenge Series. We have 26 highly skilled drivers from across the world here to compete in wine country. 9 global manufacturers are racing across 4 continents, and while we're kicking off things here at Sonoma, say hello to our friends at Paul Ricard as GT World Challenge Europe kicks off their season as well. That means it's time for the best GT racing on the planet. Well, as you can see the long line of haulers behind me, we have the familiar teams and faces back to the paddock here with us this season. But welcome from the GT4 ranks to Andy Lee and Elias Sabo. You also have Rosh West and Aaron Pavaleto competing in GT3 this season. Turner Motorsports returns, and ST Racing, they're going to have 2 BMWs on track this season. Your 2023 Pro-Am champions, that's George Kurtz and Colin Brown. They're back to defend the title here this season. You also have that Wright Motorsports Porsche competing in the Pro category. 1 year ago, they won their very first race together. We've dropped some news and new faces into this piece, but we're going to have a lot more coming at you this season, including the addition of American Muscle onto our grid. But for now, it's time for racing here at Sonoma Raceway. Let's go.
The long wait is finally over. It is time to start a brand new season of Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. And once again, the curtain opener is here in Northern California at Sonoma Raceway. My name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish will be alongside for the action all throughout the course of the season. And you already heard from Amanda Busick. Cars on the grid, and now just minutes away from the command to start engines to start a brand new season of competition. New drivers with new teams to the championship, and then some of the returning favorites from years past. It's a wonderful mix here on site at Sonoma Raceway, and a beautiful day at which to go racing. 61 degrees Fahrenheit, 16.7 degrees Celsius, just a slight wind. Wonderful conditions here this year as we take a look back at something from 1 year ago. Memories from race 2 in Fanatec GT competition 1 season ago. Final lap, race 2 of the weekend. Manny Franco, in just his 4th ever GT3 start, gets those elbows out, takes the class lead away from Ashton Harrison, but it was not done there. Harrison fighting back. Franco will leave the door open into the braking zone for turn number 11, and Ashton Harrison repays the favor, getting back to the inside, and went on to take the victory in the season opener 1 season ago. Memorable win for the Racers Edge team that celebrated in a big way, and that win helped propel Ashton Harrison and Mario Farnbacher to 2nd in the championship 1 season ago. Manny Franco and Alessandro Balzan still able to celebrate after that near victory here at Sonoma last year. But a wonderful memory as we return to the site of those exploits 1 year ago. Well, Calvin Fish, we're back here at the Sonoma Raceway circuit, and Calvin yesterday was out on track to give us a preview of the challenge these drivers will face here at Sonoma Raceway.
Welcome to the Fanatec GT Track preview from Sonoma Raceway. What a brilliant venue to start our championship season once again. And at this time of the year, look at the vibrant colors in the backdrop. But for this year, maybe the biggest change in the color palette is the racetrack itself. As you can see, a brand new racing surface for 2024. Talking to the teams, drivers and engineers, they say the grip level is insane and the lap times are simply incredible this year. But one thing remains the same, that is the characteristics of this racetrack. Let's take a closer look. A lap here at Sonoma gets off to a fast start as you flash across that start-finish line, flat out into turn one down in there at the bottom of the hill. You're in 5th gear this year and you're really going to carry speed in. You want the car placed all the way to the right initially for turn in, widen that radius, and the grip level means that a lot of the drivers are up 1 gear compared to last year, so the speeds are going to be up coming through here. Car placement is probably middle of the road, but then the real critical factor is getting the car placement correct for turn 2. That's a super important corner. Let's take a look. So coming in here with huge speed, big commitment, you want the car to start to turn in a little bit, just under the bridge there where the shadow was in the racetrack. The real key is getting the car back over to this curbing to set up for turn 2. Super important corner, blind as you can see going through there, and I always found as a driver, any racetrack with big elevation change in a blind corner made it particularly challenging. Certainly the drivers use sim to really try and learn these racetracks if they're coming here for the first time, but again, placement is critical. You're in 5th gear, initially down to 4th. Some drivers will use 3rd gear through there or high 2nd gear ratio, but the key is being clean off the exit. You don't want a lot of steering input going through there, and that is all about how you set up for the corner. Get all the way to the left, get your turning done, and get the steering out of the corner so you can go back to power and accelerate down to turn 3. As you leave turn 2, the thrill ride continues. Look at this roller coaster. This is 3A and 3B. Blind crest coming up. Very hard when you're low in the racetrack to see up over the dashboard and see where you need the car placed to get through here efficiently. With the car and the grip this year, it's going to be 4th gear through 3A. Massive commitment, but if you get too far over to the right-hand side, that'll get you out of sync to get through this next corner. Look how blind this is. You can't see where the car is going, so you've got to make sure you got it placed exactly where it needs to be. You don't want too much steering input as you come over that crest of the hill. Think about this. As the front end goes light initially, you may get a little bit more understeer, and then at the same time the rear's catching up with you, it's going to get light. If you've got that steering input, it's going to snap on you, late to power, and that may allow one of your competitors to make a move down on the inside into turn 4. You have to be careful. Well, this is a fun corner known as the carousel. You can see the blind approach there in the backdrop. These GT3 cars will come up over that crest, trying to slow things down, but if you hit the top of the crest and you're on the brakes, the car can get very unstable there, so you gotta be careful. But then you can see this camber to this corner, but it's also going downhill. Camber gives you grip, downhill takes the grip away. But with this surface, we expect this to go from what was a one-line racetrack last year through here to maybe racing side by side through here. So that should be a lot of fun to watch. But the real key is getting down to that white line. It's a long radius through here. You're going to hug that inside and then just really key on finding the correct spot to go full throttle application to get that exit speed. Exit speed will give you a run down to turn 7 and maybe in with a chance of another move down there during the race.
Fantastic preview of the challenge that awaits this field of drivers that is getting ready to start a brand new season of Fanatec GT competition. This is the pole-sitting car. Philip Ellis will lead the field to the green, and his co-driver Jeff Burton is down with Amanda.
And you'll see this 91 Mercedes of the Burton-Ellis pairing. They are one of the teams that elected to start their pro driver here with the new regulations. As I stand next to Jeff Burton, who is holding that Rova Pole Award to start this season off for you guys. How will this strategy help you and your team?
Well, Philip is about as good as you can get as a professional driver. And we just thought that with DXDT, one start with the pro up front, one with the finish it off. So it was just a flip of a coin for us. That's all it was.
How is
no real big strategy.
As of last year, you would have been the driver to start race 1 here. How will this be for you as you wait for your stint?
I hate it. I want to start, but that's okay because I know where he'll put us. He'll keep us in the front. That's great.
I figured you might say that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Good luck today as we keep on down. Oh, man, look at this trio. Bill Auberlin, Elliot Skeer, Brian Sellers racing in here in Sonoma, about to get started. Elliot, you guys move up to the pro class today. Is there any changes for that? Do you approach it differently?
Ultimately, no. The end goal is still to maximize our performance, no matter who we're racing against or whoever's in the car. Now it just becomes overall or bust. And the fun of it is the guys we were racing last year, we're still racing, but they're more sparring partners. So no, we're in for a good race. The goal is just to execute and just keep the momentum going that we have so far this year.
What was the messaging between you and Adam ahead of this race?
Ultimately, it's been a good start to the year. The Wright Motorsport guys are absolutely on it, and although it's a different series than what we've been doing early on, it is also second year in this. We're ready to go. We were just joking that our feeling going into this race is night and day compared to what it was last year, just not being rookies anymore, but ultimately we still have room to grow, and every race is an opportunity to keep on building there.
As Elliot talks about not being rookies, I'm going to find another victim on track here, and that is one of our veterans and guy that has raced in the series and all over for a long time, Bill Oberlin. And Bill, you're going to be racing again this season in the Pro class, the additional car for ST Racing. Talk about how this came together.
Well, last year we were looking to do a change, right? BMW, myself, I re-signed a contract for another 3 years, which can you imagine? And then late last year I met Varun. Then he says he wants to go racing. We got together. We tested him in a GT4, and I go, whoa. You're way too good for GT4. Put him in a GT3. He was at home immediately in the BMW. He loved it. He comes out of Porsche Carrera Cup, and now we're together. Now we're here, and I expect some great things out of him this year, and I'm totally excited to be with Sam Tam Racing. That team has been on the cutting edge. Recently we've seen it, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
Just quickly, what can you tell us about the track?
It's awesome. Oh, man, I hated this track the last 5 years. Realistically, it made no grip, and now it's got so much grip. It's fun to drive. It started coming apart. I thought, no chance it's gonna work, and it's working perfect.
Thank you, Bill. Ryan?
Well, great to hear that ringing endorsement, Cal, from one of the great veterans in this sport. He's got a ton of laps around this place, and if he says it's great, it's great.
It's going to make for great racing because typically it was a one-line racetrack around here because of the lack of grip, but now we're going to see drivers going side by side through some of the critical sectors of this racetrack. It should be fun to watch it develop in race one of the championship season.
Plenty of new names to the championship here. Many of them get to start this race. Can you imagine what's going through their minds?
Oh, it's certainly a baptism of fire here because a lot of pressure and new categories for many of the drivers on the grid here right now.
Well, so many stories as we look down at the grid, and we've got 90 minutes to tell them to you, at least here for race number one. Race two coming up tomorrow. But we look here at one of the teams to keep an eye on for sure. CrowdStrike by Riley, reigning Pro-Am champions in Fanatec GT. Showed great pace throughout the practice session that started set the grid for this race earlier today. ST Racing with a pair of cars. Flying Lizard stepping up to the top. So many wonderful stories throughout this grid. And here to get things started, the Chief Trust Officer at Autodesk. Here to give the command is Sebastian Goodwin down on the grid.
Drivers, start your engines!
And with those famous words, the engines roar to life. 12 GT3 cars set to do battle and start the 2024 Fanatec GT season here in North America. You look at this group here, Calvin. What a season a year ago. Finally breaking through for that Pro-Am championship. They come back. So much around them has changed, but this team has been a constant over the past few seasons.
It really has. I mean, they made the move, I think it was 3 seasons ago, to team up with Riley with immediate success. And they got the most experience in the field right now. They're going for another championship, but they already know it's not going to come easy. You see new drivers here full-time, like Philip Ellis. He's going to start from the pole. He's an AMG factory driver, so it's going to be an exciting mix here, and it's like the first day of school. We're not quite sure what to expect, but it should be fun.
Last year we saw new stars emerge in the first weekend of the season. The Elliot Skeer, Adam Adelson combination comes to mind. Who do you have your eye on this weekend that might emerge as a star of the future?
Well, I think a team that came together very late in the off-season is Racers Edge. We saw their success here last year with Mario Fartenbacher and Ashton Harrison, and now they've got a very exciting driver lineup with Zach Veach and young Luca Mars. So Luca Mars does have time in this Acura NSX, but they don't have a lot of seat time recently. But this racetrack is certainly challenging. It's just over 2.5 miles. You got 12 turns around this racetrack. As we look at that circuit map, you'll certainly see just a ton of elevation change. Yes, it's 2.5 miles, super challenging, but I always felt as a driver when I came to a circuit where you had so many blind corners, you really identifying that and getting comfortable with that and having that circuit knowledge was a huge bonus. So for the drivers that have experience here, that should play a factor today. But as we've seen so far this weekend in the racing earlier today, Ryan, you're going to explore new opportunities to make some moves around here, and that's the exciting part of today and getting the green flag here this afternoon.
You do talk about the elevation change here, and it is massive. Something around 160 feet. That's about 15 stories of elevation change from high point to low point around this track. And that's one of the things that gives this place its character.
It does, and most of that is through the first half of the racetrack itself. You get down here through the S's, heading down towards turn 9. It's a lot flatter, less topography going on, but nonetheless, you know, just finding the grip, and drivers were exploring during that 1 hour practice / qualifying session this morning. They'll have made some tweaks to the race car, trying to get the cars dialed into this new racing service, but overall, the lap times, the lap road kills are going to be absolutely smashed here this weekend.
When you raced here, was there a favorite section of this track?
I think I won't call it, I say, the most challenging, because I never really felt, I didn't do a ton of racing here at Sonoma Raceway, based on the East Coast for most of my racing. But nonetheless, I felt that the first half of this circuit was just super challenging, much like the Nürburgring.
It's a great comparison to make. Any track would love to be compared to the Nürburgring as the cars make their way around on the first of 2 formation laps. Crucial on a day like today. There's a bit of a chill in the air, 60 degrees. It's comfortable outside, but by no means balmy. These cars do get tire warmers to get their cars and tires prepared for the start of this race, but nevertheless, these formation laps crucial to make sure they're in their operating window for the green flag. Well, let's take a look at how the cars will line up for the first race of the 2024 season. The starting grid for this race on the row of pole position for DXDT Racing will be Philip Ellis. We heard from his teammate earlier in the day in the broadcast. That was Jeff Burton. Racers Edge Motorsports should be lining up in the second spot. Apologies for the graphic, but based on the grid that we were given, we do expect it'll be Luca Mars lining up second, Adam Adelson in the third spot, Varun Choksi in fourth. Then George Kurtz and Will Hardiman, Scott Smithson, Samantha Tan, Justin Rothberg on debut, and Elias Sabo starting 9th and 10th. Ross Schwest and Kyle Washington will start in the final row of the grid. I know that doesn't line up with what you're seeing on the screen, but based on how they rolled out of the pit lane and on the grid we were given, I think that is what we can expect, but we'll keep an eye on any changes that might emerge here before we take the green. Final thoughts from you, Calvin, as these drivers prepare. They're strapped in, the long off-season wait is over, and now it's time to go racing.
Well, I think just the strategy. I mean, Jeff Burton said it wasn't really a strategy called as a flip of a coin, but ultimately you're going to have Philip Ellis as the really solid pro in this field, leading this field to green. What they need to do is have Philip Ellis just take off from this field, try and gap the rest of what I'd call the secondary drivers in the lineups here, but they don't need a caution. They don't need any reset where that gap that he should establish gets erased before Jeff Burton gets in behind the wheel. And then Jeff Burton, he's going to have a ton of pressure with a bunch of pros trying to chase him down and go for the lead. That's how it should shape up, but racing, you never know what's going to happen here. It could all go in a different direction by the end of turn 2 here today.
We saw fireworks here at Sonoma the last time we were here 1 season ago. There up in the flag stand is Chris Goodfellow, a guest of CrowdStrike. He'll be waving the green flag to get this 2024 season started. Possibly the best view in the house as this field of GT3 machinery makes its way through the hairpin of turn 11 for the final time. Good alignment in this field. On pole position, it will be Philip Ellis from DXDT Racing. Slightly different strategy from them, electing to start their pro driver, taking advantage of that regulation as they get into the VP acceleration zone. There's the green flag. We are racing in 2024. Here they come up the hill. Adelson makes a nice move up the inside to grab second away from Luca Mars. The fight is on further back in the pack, though.
As we've seen so many times today on the initial start, that outside front row starter is always vulnerable to the third position starter, and Adelson does the same thing on Luca Mars there, arresting second position early.
Good getaway from Ellis, as you would expect. Now his job becomes build a gap for his co-driver Jeff Burton to nurse home in the second half of this race. Adelson Strong run up to the second spot. There's an aggressive move. One of the BMWs a little further back. Took a peek to the inside into the carousel, but settled back in line.
Really solid start for Varun Shoksky there, taking that number 20 ST Racing BMW Ellis Skeer with Bill Aublin into an early 4th position. Looks to the inside here, and Luca Mars has to eat up the curb a little bit to not get into him. Sabo in trouble early. This may be in the carousel.
Looks like it is, just off to the inside. Driver's left, coming down the hill in the carousel. And Elias Sabo, who's making his first ever GT3 start here today, finds himself off track. Looks like he's maybe trying to reset that race car with the lights flickering off and on.
So Ellis had a little bit of wheel spin, it looked like initially when he jumped the field there when we saw the green. But he settled in just as we expect. He just wants a good, clean race. He doesn't want full course yellows. He needs to be able to establish that gap, hand that car over to his teammate, Jeff Burton, with a big, healthy lead and try and see if he can hang on today.
One lap in the books, and Ellis does hold the advantage by 2.1 seconds over the chasing Adam Adelson. Adelson, though, leading within the pro class ahead of Luca Mars. Mars with his mirrors full of Varun Shoksky. So a couple of drivers making their series debut, sitting right in front of the reigning Pro-Am champion, George Kurtz.
Shoksky doing an excellent job, as Bill Aublin talked about on the grid to Amanda, that he was immediately impressed by this young man. Ran in the Porsche Carrera Cup series last year with Wright Motorsports. These drivers met up late in the season last year and immediately came together as the safety car is out to try and get Sabo into a safe place on this race circuit.
Wow, that's a heartbreaking start to the season for Flying Lizard and Elias Sabo, who has been gradually building up to this moment over the past few seasons, gathering experience and chalking up race wins and podiums in GT4 competition. Makes the jump to GT3, but the race only lasts about 4 corners.
This is not what Philip Ellis and the DXDT team wanted with this strategy. So imagine if you got a yellow like this right before they were about to make their pit stop. You'd basically be throwing Jeff Burton in behind the wheel of that 91 machine with a bunch of pros right behind him, so that would backfire in a big way. So they need a long green flag run before they do that driver change here today.
That's the roll of the dice that DXDT elected to make, at least on that one car. Their other car, Scott Smithson and Brian Sellers, taking a much more conventional approach and starting their amateur driver, non-pro driver, for race number 1. And that is different compared to last year. One of a couple of differences in the regulations that we should touch on that will change the complexion of racing here in 24.
Yeah, well, this year, you can, whether you're in Pro or Pro-Am, you can elect who will be your number 1 race driver and number 2 race driver. So that's what we saw there with the 91 strategy. Another difference is we don't have a dedicated pit stop window. Last year it was the middle 10 minutes of the race, so between 40 and 50 minutes in. Now there's a maximum drive time of 50 minutes, and it's really much the same thing. However, it does allow for maybe an earlier pit stop, working out with an 85-second minimum pit stop delta. These cars could come in as early as 38 minutes, 35 seconds on the board and hit pit lane, and then you wouldn't exceed 50 minutes by the time you come out of pit lane with that second driver. But expect Ellis to stay in as long as he possibly can here to maximize his drive time and get the advantage they're looking for.
And that change to the drive time regulations vis-a-vis having a mandatory 10-minute window, as we've seen in the past, that change was implemented at the request of the paddock. That was something that a number of teams and strategists came to the series and said, you know what, we'd rather have more of this in our hands to be able to make our own decisions, and the series responded.
Yeah, they listened, and that's what it's all about in terms of working together with the entrants in the field. In my mind, it doesn't make a massive difference. All it's doing is extending that window a little bit, but you're not got a hard line in the sand from the series perspective. It takes a little bit of pressure off the officials, puts it more in the hands of the teams, and that's what the teams wanted.
Safety car is out, as we can see, and unfortunately for Elias Sabo, he has now dropped a lap to the field. Not sure that the car necessarily has anything wrong with it, but the way that it's wedged into the hillside there, I'm not sure that it's not high-sided. Maybe simply can't drive away and needs a little extra assistance.
Yeah, it's a shame because as not like the GT America race where some of these drivers competed earlier today, where you're not allowed tire warmers or blankets. You are allowed them with this championship. So typically you've got a little bit of heat in the Pirelli P0s to help you on that opening lap. I'm not sure if he got nudged or if he just had a quick spin there. Difficult corner. You come in there, you crest that hill, rear of the car can get a little bit unstable, so we haven't seen a replay yet to see if it was by himself or whether he got help there.
You could see the intervention vehicle able to get to Elias and help tow him back onto this new surface here on the racetrack. Pavement of the track began back in December of last year. It was the first full repave here at Sonoma since 2001. And without a doubt, the surface here had aged. It created for a lot of tire drop-off. The old surface did over the course of a run. That's pretty much been eliminated with this new surface that we've seen laid down. In addition to the higher speeds, we're seeing very little difference in terms of pace from the start of a stint to the end.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that's the drivers love grip. You know, they love speed, they love grip. Bill Auckland said, I love this place now. He said, I've hated it for the last half a dozen years when the grip level was so low. But the car's not sliding. It's when the car's sliding where you generate tire drag and wearing the tire out, overheating the tire. So you got a lot more stability and the tire will stay underneath you longer.
One of our onboard cameras here this weekend is Samantha Tan at ST Racing. Her co-driver is Neil Verhagen.
And Ryan, you'll remember last year this duo linked up at VIR, and they would go on to have 5 podiums in a row, including a win together. That's pretty high of a resume that you had last year. What goals are on the season, Neil?
Yeah, I think obviously the first thing we want to do is build off of what we had established last year. It was a great start for us. I think there was still some potential that we didn't tap into, so we're going to be looking to extracting that this year.
We know the track time was a little compressed here this week. Where are you at with the BMW, and is it victory worthy here this weekend?
Yeah, for myself, I've never been here before, so it's my first time, so obviously I would have liked a little bit more of the track time. The car felt pretty good in qualifying this morning. I was happy with my lap. I think it was P4 overall, which I was fairly happy with. I think the others maybe are a bit quicker right now, but yeah, we'll see. I think it's a long race. We saw towards the end of races last year that our car was very quick, that we had good end-of-race pace. Maybe qualifying pace was never our strongest bit, but we could fight our way back.
Thank you, Neil. Have a great season.
Thank you.
Neil Verhagen, native of Ridgefield, Connecticut, now calls the Charlotte, North Carolina area home. Although he's American, he's not done much racing in the States, so I'm not terribly surprised to hear he's not been here in the past. As the lights are out on the safety car, which means we are about to restart the race. After a full course yellow period initiated by an incident involving Elias Sabo in turn number 4 on the opening lap, Elias is back out and running at the tail end of the train, but has lost a lap. He and Andy Lee have a lot of work to do to get back into the mix. Philip Ellis, the pole sitter, controls the field heading to the VP acceleration zone for the restart, and now he steps on the loud pedal. Phil Ellis starting to accelerate away from Adam Adelson, but Adelson coming under attack here from Luca Mars, who started on the outside of the front row and dropped back to third. He'll settle in line up the hill, but a battle further back here between Rothberg and Smithson fighting for 7th and 8th.
Rothberg gets wide there through turn 2, has to give up the throttle a little bit. He's getting swamped right now.
Rothberg, one of a handful of these drivers that took part in the GT America race earlier today, so he does have some recent track knowledge, but just does go a little bit wide. That cost him a couple of positions as Sam Tan was able to get around, at least possibly another car as well.
Well, the real key is there when you're running around behind the safety car, you got to prep the tires for the restart. Maybe with Justin's experience, he didn't quite do that. Typically, you're riding the brake against the gas pedal, trying to generate a little bit of heat up through the braking system into the wheel and into the tire itself. So we see Sabo now on pit lane. Crew is checking it out, but he's obviously gone down a lap.
For Elias, though, still very little seat time in this GT3 car. So this may not be a great result, but it is crucial for his development to get as much testing done, even if it is in race, as possible with an eye on the rest of the season.
Things settling in as we anticipated. Philip Ellis from the pole position and from the lead position takes off again. Adelson just wants to keep him in check there. Admittedly, they're in different classes, so Pro-Am versus the next Pro-Am runner is George Kurtz in 5th. So it's Colin Brown who's going to be hoping that his teammate George Kurtz can keep Philip Ellis somewhat in sight so he can then go to work during the second phase of this race.
One thing that could play into DXDT Racing's strategy here of starting Ellis, building this gap, is that there's a buffer of 3 out-of-class cars that Colin Brown would need to work through in order to get to Jeff Burton, at least for a little while, until that trio catches Jeff in the second stint. Perhaps that's something that's factored into their decision-making process to take an alternate strategy. That's Jeff Burton watching on as his teammate Philip Ellis is doing exactly what he's been paid to do here this weekend, which is scamper away from the field and build a buffer.
Yeah, that's really a great point, Ryan, in terms of the drivers that Colin Brown, potentially if they stay as they are and we get to that pit stop exchange, you know, that means that Colin Brown's got to get around Bill Albany, he's got to get around Zach Veach, he's got to get around Elliot Skeer, who's been the fastest driver here this weekend. So that's going to be tough sledding to even get to the tail of that 91 machine potentially.
Great look at the high-speed, high-commitment section of this track, the S's. That's turns 7A down through really turn 10. This sequence flows into one another. These corners flowing into one another. Now around turn 10 here into the brake zone for the hairpin, turn 11. One of a handful of reasonable passing zones around this circuit.
Certainly is, but all of these brake zones, Ryan, have been shortened because of the grip level. That means you're not on the brakes as early, trying to get the car slowed down. So that's changed the dynamic. We've seen that in a few racing maneuvers earlier today. People are misjudging that. It's a whole new learning curve.
Good little scrap developing here. That was Choxy coming through in 4th. But then you find Kurtz, Hardiman, and Smithson. They run 5th, 6th, and 7th overall, but 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the Pro-Am class. It looks like they've got a good little battle breaking out between them, but Phil Ellis, in the meantime, laying down the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race at a 1:33.224, and his gap has quickly expanded up to 3.6 seconds.
Yeah, that last lap, he was 2.5 seconds quicker than the whole field, so that's the sort of pace he has. He wants to try and repeat that lap after lap and really gap the rest of this field and give Jeff Burton the best opportunity to try and bring it home.
On board with 2nd place overall, the leader in the Pro class, Adam Adelson. First year in the Pro class, this duo of Adelson and Skeer, they were runners-up in the Pro-Am class championship 1 year ago. Really lit the world on fire with their debut here in Sonoma.
On board here, listen in. Flat out through turn 10. Down this big, deep brake zone, but watch how quickly he can get back to power now with the grip coming off this corner. Right there, look how early he is in the corner, getting back to power. Before you really have to be patient and wait for the exit to get the power fully down. Now you just tromp on that right pedal.
Couldn't have done that last year on the old surface.
You'd have been backwards in a heartbeat.
This huge climb to the high point.
Look at the blind, you can see there, you're almost sort of like looking up, getting up in the seat, trying to see over the dashboard through turn 2. Same thing here in 3B. Blind corner, right there, you're looking at the sky. The road falls away from you.
Now the plunge back down the hill, headed towards the carousel. After this right-hander, you reach the carousel here, turn 6, long duration corner, puts a ton of load into the outside tires. And you could tell just with his hand inputs, right? Just how on the ragged edge that car is through that section.
Yeah, power steering in these cars, so it allows you to move your hands a little bit, just feeling where the grip is. But Adam Adelson has just been completely at home. They had success together in GT4 competition here in SRO, made this transition immediately in winner's circle. 6 wins on the year, P2 in the championship. And they're having fun with the delay in the track action this weekend. He had a couple of his childhood buddies here this weekend, and he had him in the car yesterday doing driver changes, and his buddies actually got pretty close to he and Elliot until they put the helmet on, and then they couldn't see what they were doing. That turned into a complete disaster, so that was reality. But the team were having fun, and if you lost the battle, you had to do 20 push-ups in the paddock, so a lot of fun was being having had yesterday as we waited for this track to get back ready for action.
It is a fun-loving group, that's for sure. As we check in here on the 2nd place car in the Pro-Am class, that's George Kurtz, So as we watch this stint develop, Philip Ellis leading overall, but that's the pro in a Pro-Am car out in front. On the other side of the coin, George Kurtz, Will Hardiman, Scott Smithson, who we're watching right here. These are the amateur drivers in these Pro-Am lineups, getting their drive time done early. Then they'll turn it over to the pros for the second stint. And how that meshes together over the course of 90 minutes will be fascinating.
Yeah, and you're going to see the drive change, probably about 10 to 12 minutes different between the Pro-Am runners, with the AMs in the cars right now probably coming in early, getting their pros in, maximize their drive time. Philip Ellis, as we said, just wants green flag action, extend that gap as much as he can, stay out on the racetrack to the last possible moment, which is 50 minutes maximum drive time, and just see if they can eke out a victory here on the opening round of this championship season.
Not only has Ellis been fast, but he has been consistent. His last 2 laps were within 18 thousandths of a second of one another. 18 thousandths of a second between that last lap and his best lap, which was the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, and that's what you expect from pros. If you have a racetrack that gives you grip like this, and you have a tire like the Pirelli P0 that is so consistent, the ultimate pros can lap after lap within a tenth or two. That's what it's all about. They identify where the threshold is with the tire, with the track, and they'll be able to repeat that. That's the difference between a pro and an AM driver, whereas AM is trying to figure out, why did I achieve that lap time? How do I repeat it? But for Philip Ellis, he's so at home behind the wheel of this Mercedes AMG platform, been a factory driver now since 2021, and is really on top of his game right now.
If you were wondering where Philip Ellis is fast relative to the others, you see on this graphic the answer is everywhere. All 3 sectors belong to the Swiss driver. Race Vision, powered by AWS.
Certainly a fun guy, has had amazing success here on North American soil recently. Had a good chat with him yesterday, and I said, I know your background, your history in terms of success, but how did you get started? And he said, well, really, I had no racing background whatsoever. Love watching Formula One on TV with my dad, and I looked at it one day and said, that's what I want to do. So how did he go about it? He Googled race car teams. Literally Googled, found about 300 teams, sent out emails to every one of them, had one team respond, invited into a test day at a kart circuit. Immediately he was up to speed, impressed, and they said, we'll give you a ride, but it's about 100K. And he said, I don't have 100K, so he had to walk away from that opportunity. But he persisted and ultimately found his way into this sport, and wow, what a story.
Won his first championship in Formula Lista Junior back in 2011. Won an Audi Sport TT Cup championship in 2017, but has made a name for himself in GT racing with Mercedes AMG. Racing at the Nürburgring, racing in GT World Challenge Europe, and a little bit here stateside. Great to have him for a full season alongside Jeff Burton.
And I think that's going to be great for Jeff. I think him repeating with the same platform, with the same team, and just having someone who's so poised, so experienced, and with so much speed, he can look at the data and identify where Philip is finding and extracting the speed out of this race car, but at the same time recognizing, I just can't cut and paste it. I've got to drive within my own limitations. If this racetrack stays green right now and Philip continues to do the job, he's got to get out there, hit his marks, not make a mistake, just drive a good, clean race, and they've got a great chance of a win here today.
3rd year as a fully fledged Mercedes AMG factory performance driver. Before that, spent a number of seasons as a junior in their driver development pyramid. In that time, has racked up a pair of 24-hour of Daytona wins, won a class title at Sebring earlier this year, and also has a class win at the Nürburgring going back to 2021. So an impressive resume for Philip Ellis. I called him Swiss earlier, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Sometimes you see him listed as from the UK, sometimes from Germany. But I think spent most of his youth growing up in Switzerland.
He did. He was born in Munich, he told me, and then they pretty much immediately moved to Switzerland. That was when he got the bug about racing. That was where he was sending out those emails from to try and attract a team to be interested in him. But yeah, he certainly moved around a lot with his father's businesses across the years. So a lot of experience. And at one point, he basically separated from his family for a couple of years, was based down in Mallorca, Spain, still looking for racing opportunities. So he's given it a lot. It's a great story, and now he's on top of his game, leading this motor race today.
building a massive gap. It's now 11.2 seconds. Keeps resetting the CrowdStrike fastest lap seemingly every other lap. But Adam Adelson is doing exactly what's required of him. He leads in class. 1:33.979 the last lap time for Adelson, so that's only about a second off of Philip Ellis's pace. This is for a driver only in his second year of GT3 racing.
I've been so impressed with Adam, how he's adapted to this car. I mean, for some people, they get intimidated by that. They can't handle the extra power and downforce and the commitment that it takes. But for someone like Adam Adelson, he's just thrived in this environment. He loves the confidence that this car will give him. He's got a great teammate in Elliot Skeer. He's a great yardstick, but I think most importantly, he's got a great team with great experience, and the chemistry between he and Elliot, they're enjoying these race weekends, and you can see it on his face, and you can see it in his enthusiasm, and it showcases itself with his performance behind the wheel as well.
The lead is right around 10 seconds, and it begs the question, without the safety car on the first lap, how big might that gap be at this stage? That certainly was not what DXDT Racing was hoping for from a strategy perspective.
No, and they just need, as we said before, a good green flag run here to maximize that gap and give Jeff Burton something to work with, allow him to get out of the pit lane, settle in, do a couple of laps to get his feet underneath him and get into a rhythm. And then he just needs to be talked to. I'm sure Philip will be on the radio as well as his race engineer trying to talk him through the second phase of this race, but still a long way to go before that point.
On board with Samantha Tan. On the inset on the left-hand side of the screen, you see her co-driver, Neil Verhagen. What a great duo those two formed in the second half of the year last year, but whoa, Sam's got a loose race car to handle. That looked like a wild moment.
Yeah, it really was. This is turn 4. Chasing after Justin Rothberg and a similar BMW M4. 3 BMWs in this race this weekend. Look at the little wiggle up ahead by Rothberg, trying to get the power down early. It's a little bit of an uphill climb here into turn 7, into the brake zone. This is a corner where the drivers have said you can't believe the difference in minimum speed through here this year compared to last with this new track surface and the grip that it creates.
I think Samantha had some of her best drives last season. There were a few times where she had front-running pace relative to some really top drivers. I thought it was a breakout season for her and for the team. And now with a full season to work together, she and Neil Verhagen could be a very potent pairing.
And I think when she gets thrown into those situations where you are leading the race and things like that, that just gives her confidence. And she's always had a great skill set. She's worked on that. She's got some great mentorship. She used to have Nick Johnson. I'm sure he's still working with Samantha this year. There's a great tutor and mentor off the track. And it's not just performance behind the wheel. It's all of the things that it entails in terms of your fitness level, your nutrition, every aspect of the game. Every box has to be ticked. And then she's worked alongside some great drivers as well. John Edwards started the campaign with her last year for 3 races, a BMW factory driver. He actually sat on the pole here last year to the fastest time in qualifying, and then obviously Neil has stepped into those shoes and done an amazing job as well.
I think this could be one of the breakout stars this year. It's young Luca Mars driving for Racer's Edge. He's teamed with former IndyCar driver Zach Veach, who's standing by with Amanda.
And welcome to Fanatec GT to Zach Veach. And you go back to race 1 here in the season, but you look at Racer's Edge. They have won 3 out of the last 5 championships. That means you know what this outfit is capable of. Is that pressure for you?
Well, this is a team that can do it, you know, and that's just confidence for us. Luca and I, we're learning with every single lap because we haven't had a ton of track time, so he's doing a heck of a job right now. I couldn't be more proud of him. And then it's my turn to perform as he's doing. So it's a tough field. A lot of the guys I've raced with in the past are here, so we know the competition's there. We just got to go out there and show it.
You said that the track time has been limited, as we know. Where do you feel you are?
Definitely need just a bit more time, you know, getting used to this Acura NSX. It's such a high commitment track that you got to take little nibbles at it, but I think we're okay. You know, this is going to be the most time I have in the car, my stint that's coming up, so we're going to learn as much as we can in it.
Welcome into the series.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
He's a really good driver. You might call him fun-sized. Certainly not the most robust you'll meet at a racetrack, but he had some really good runs in Indy cars. Finished as high as 4th at Long Beach one year. I think that was his rookie season. And someone who had a lot of success on the junior open wheel ladder. While we were talking to Zach a moment ago, Scott Smithson had a little spin and rejoin, so that cost him about 3 positions. He was running between Kurtz and Hardiman at the time of the spin. He has now dropped back behind Samantha Tan in 9th overall.
That fun size can work, though, being a race car driver. I mean, you're lighter. I mean, there's a minimum average weight that has to be accomplished between the driver pairings in, which is 85 kilograms with all of your safety kit on as well. But nonetheless, there's nothing worse than being a big, tall guy trying to get into a small race car and being limited just physically by your head hitting the roof or whatever the case may be. So better to be on the jockey side than a larger guy, for sure.
Good fight here between the two BMWs. The Turner team, great to have them back in the championship after a few years away, at least on a full-time basis. We've seen them with some one-offs in the past few seasons. That is the car you're looking at through the windshield of Justin Rothberg, Ferrari Challenge champion a year ago, fending off the challenge from, I guess we have to call her a veteran now, Samantha Tan, who's been in this game for the last 7 or 8 years, and the last 2 or 3 at the GT3 level.
Yes, for sure. And you talk about the one-offs. Turner Motorsport did show up at VIR last year, and Robbie Foley put their car on the pole, so they certainly showcase that they can show up in this paddock with immediate effect and great results.
This is going to be really fun, I think. Samantha probably knows Justin from Ferrari Challenge. She's done some of that in the past, even in recent seasons. So there's a chance these two may have sparred over in that championship, but now making that step into top-level GT3 racing, mixed manufacturer GT3 racing. And she's definitely closing in, but is there a gap? Is there enough of a weakness in order to get by? She'll have the advantage in knowing this platform, though, having driven it now for multiple seasons.
Yeah, and I think we're also looking at 2 drivers. Samantha did get some seat time last week in a test here. Some of the teams elected to not do that, thinking there'd be 2 days of testing leading into this race weekend. Obviously, we had some track issues, so that curtailed a lot of that running. So for Justin Rothberg and the Turner Motorsports team, they've been on the back foot, as have many others, like Racers Edge, for example, and they're learning as they're going here on this new racing surface. But Justin's done a really nice job. He's had his 2nd start here today, ran in the GTA race, had a similar bobble in the early going, just run a little bit wide, but he's regrouped both times and got into a nice rhythm here.
Coming up on 30 minutes down. It's just 2 minutes away now in this 90-minute race. Let's talk strategy for a moment. I know we highlighted it at the top of the show, but if people are just tuning in, there are some differences in the regulations. No longer is the pit window dictated by a 10-minute mandatory pit window. Instead, it's minimum and maximum stint lengths that the teams need to factor in. And so with most of the teams electing, Calvin, to start this race with their lower graded driver, their amateur driver, how close are we to perhaps seeing that switchover begin?
We're probably within about 10 minutes. Essentially, the earliest stop with the pit lane delta 85 seconds, I worked out to be 38 minutes, 35 seconds into this race. So we're about 29 minutes in right now. And that means by coming into the pit lane then, doing an accurate stop in terms of 85 seconds, which is the minimum stop delta, that would mean the driver exiting the pits wouldn't exceed that 50-minute maximum. And that's what you want to do with your pros. Get them out there for the max amount of time, maximum effect. We're also going to get a fresh set of tires as well to work with.
Thinking more about DXDT Racing strategy, electing to do the opposite, starting their pro, building this gap, which is now 16.7 seconds.
Well, their 50-minute maximum will be trying to be served by their fastest driver, which is, of course, the pro, Philip Ellis. So he's going to be close to that 50-minute mark before he hits pit lane. But all of the time, they just got their fingers crossed we don't see a full-course yellow again and minimize that gap that he has.
Another thing that might be playing into that strategy in the past, because tire wear was so big here, running long in the opening stint really could be at your detriment. But because we're seeing incredible pace, I mean, Ellis on the last lap just reset the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race. There is no drop-off over the course of this stint, you can't do the undercut strategy the way you would have here in previous seasons.
No, that's a great point. I mean, certainly an undercut by a lap or two is not going to affect the gap that Philip Ellis is establishing of 16 seconds plus, providing everyone has similar pit stops. But yeah, certainly everything's working in their favor other than that early yellow, which minimized the gap that he's able to pull here. It's still been a really good job for this team.
So the gap you're looking at on this graphic is comparing first and second specifically in the Pro-Am class. So Ellis leading overall, also, of course, leading in the Pro-Am class. Second in Pro-Am is George Kurtz, who is 5th overall. That's really the gap we need to be keeping in mind. Yes, they wanted overall win, but ultimately the points are paid out relative to the other cars in Pro-Am. That gap, we talk about it being 16 seconds first to second, but actually it's even greater than that when you're considering first to second within Pro-Am specifically.
Yeah, and you could see how that gap is being established by that last lap with Philip Ellis a couple of seconds quicker than George Kurtz, who currently runs in P2 in the Pro-Am class. So everything's going well. They just need a good, clean race. And then Jeff Burton just to do his job, recognize they'll be able to give him a target time, maybe even just say, if you repeat this lap time, we have enough of a gap to work with. Don't push it any harder than that. But there's still certain variables in a race, whether it's traffic or whatever the scenario may be, that Jeff's going to have to deal with. So going to be a ton of pressure on him with potentially a big lead to try and protect.
That CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race, also a new track record here at Sonoma Raceway. Previous track record was right around 133, so we're 0.6 of a second or so under it, and that comes in race conditions here, Calvin, with still an ample tank of fuel at this stage and tires that have been running for 32 minutes.
Yeah, and with that, some of the corners here were just resurfaced yesterday. So it's not a grip at the optimum level. So maybe potentially tomorrow as well, we could see lap times even dip under what we're seeing here this afternoon. But so far, so good. Beautiful afternoon. Ambient temperatures just around 60 degrees. So it's a perfect day for racing. Engines are working well. Track is not too hot. Grip is there. Probably tires working well. Philip Ellis is feeling it right now.
I liked that shot we had briefly of Jeff Burton. Look cool as a cucumber down there and unfazed by the task at hand.
Yeah, you got to wonder what's bubbling inside, though.
Mm-hmm. Not sure if he'd speak to Amanda or not in these moments, but I would be curious.
Well, he's itching to get going. He likes to be behind the wheel. He said, I'd prefer to be starting, but he knows the strategy. This was what they were willing to do. They're going to compromise tomorrow. What they really want to happen tomorrow is to have Jeff Burton have a solid first phase to the race, and then ideally getting a reset where Philip Ellis would then do the second phase of the race with a compression of the field. So whereas all the other pros in the other cars would establish a gap that he's got to then break down, if they got a reset right before, that could come to them as well. So I like the gamble. I like the gamble.
I ask and I receive. Well done. Amanda Busick has gone down to find Jeff Burton. Let's hear from him now.
Well, Jeff, I'll tell you, the booth has been describing you as cool as a cucumber. What's going inside those thoughts right now?
Well, I'm glad the yellow flag's over. Phil can extend a lead, and if I can drive like I have in the past, then we've got a chance. That's all I'm asking for, is a good chance. Car's got to stay performing like it is. So I can't wait. I want to get it in the car. So
there's a nice gap in seconds. There's 3 cars in between you guys from where the Pro-Am cars are between the Pro-Am cars. It's going to be Colin Brown coming for you. What does that mean?
Well, Colin's a fabulous racer. We all know it. I mean, he's performed so well over the years. Great partner of George's. I'm not in the caliber that Colin is. I'm not a professional racer on a daily basis like him. But if I can put some good laps together for the next 30, 40 minutes, it'll be fun to compete with him.
Enjoy it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Great look into the psyche of Jeff Burton. Now, those teams on the other side of the strategy coin are starting to prepare. We saw Elliot Skeer getting the helmet on. This is the car he's due to take over. Remember, this is the leading car in the pro class here, on board with his teammate Adam Adelson. Adelson into the brake zone here. The car in front of him, I believe, is Elias Sambo. That's the car that brought out the only full course yellow of the race back on lap number 1. Car lost at least 1 lap. Actually, you can see on the graphic there now 4 laps down. Also looks like something has gone awry for GMG Racing. Tom Sargent now driving. And was at least momentarily shown to be a lap down, but perhaps that has changed. Nevertheless, there's a look at Adam Carroll from Northern Ireland, getting ready to take the controls away from Will Hardiman, who's having a nice run today. There you see it, up a couple of spots, 3 spots in the race, running 6th. How about this stint, though, from Luca Mars, right in the tire tracks of Adelson, who was 2nd in the Pro-Am Championship a year ago. Significantly more GT3 experience. This is Luca's first ever GT3 race, but doing an admirable job.
He really has. He has good experience. He did the driving academy that HPD had in conjunction with Racers Edge. That's how John Maraki, who runs this team, got to know him. So he's got good experience. I think there was a plan for maybe Luca to run in GT3 competition with the new Ford GT3 platform, but there was a deal struck. John spoke to the Luca Mars and his dad and the family and said, you know what, how about giving the kids some GT3 experience before that Ford is available to you for next year? And they said, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. So it came together late in the day. Zach Veach got the approach from HPD to work with John Maraki. Zach still continues to do a lot of sim work on the IndyCar side of things, so there's a lot of great relationships that he's established over the years, and that's how the network works within motorsport to create opportunity, put pieces of the puzzle together, and you can see they're having a really solid start.
I first became aware of Luca back in 2021. He did 2 TCA starts in the TC America Championship. He had a Mazda MX-5 Cup car for Copeland Motorsports at Sebring and was instantly on the pace, fighting for podiums there. And ran some additional races in GT4 machinery over the years. Subsequent to that, always seems to be quick. Can't wait to see what he can do with that wonderful Racers Edge team, which has such a long history of developing young drivers and turning them into proven pros.
Oh, absolutely. Over the years, so many young drivers like Jordan Taylor, Dane Cameron, John Edwards all spent time there in terms of learning the ropes, and John Maraki runs an excellent team for so many years in GT4 competition. Then he got this opportunity with GT3, and we talked about the success that they've had, 3 championships over the last handful of years, and they can get the job done. They realize they're on the back foot a little bit with the lateness of this program coming together, but we can see already Mars running there in the top 3 overall.
On the bright side, the team knows the car extremely well. They've been running it for half a decade at this point. They've really been the sharp end of the spear for HPD, now HRC, racing these Acuras in SRO competition here stateside. So plenty of excitement there on that end. Meanwhile, it's now a 3-car fight here between Rothberg, Tan, and Smithson. Smithson, who had that spin about 10-15 minutes ago, has run down this duo, and suddenly we've got a really good 3-way fight.
Right now, at this point on the clock, you could pit right now, and the next driver getting in, if you do a full pit stop delta, would not exceed the 50-minute drive time. So the teams are certainly aware of that, and there we see it, the 0-4 car, Bill Riley, totally on top of that strategy, trying to maximize the seat time here for Colin Brown.
Absolutely no surprise to see Riley knows the rule book, right on the ragged edge, but they make the call to bring George Kurtz into the pit lane and maximize the drive time now for Colin Brown, who has been a busy guy this year, racing in LMP2, racing in IndyCar, but now back in the GT3 machine, in which he won a Pro-Am championship alongside George Kurtz 1 year ago.
This is like an undercut of a different description. We're not talking about tire performance, we're talking about driver performance here.
Exactly so. The orchestrated ballet of the tire change here in the pits, refueling the car as well. Looks like the driver change went pretty smoothly. George just helping Colin get strapped in.
Sometimes you substitute, you can either have the driver do it or a crew member do it as an additional person, so you sub out the drivers. Only 4 mechanics can work on the car during these pit stops, and then the driver getting out to help, or you can have a substitute driver assist. Everyone, dominoes are now falling. All of the AM drivers coming in. We expect Philip Ellis to stay out there for almost another 10 minutes to maximize his drive time with their strategy.
And even the Pro Class cars are going to make this call too. These are the less experienced, the silver-graded drivers in these Pro cars that are starting the race here today. Adelson, Mars, and Choxy. So on board with the Wright Motorsports car of Adelson as he makes his way to the pits. This battle on track breaks off. It will be up to the co-drivers now to take it the distance. Couple of BMWs and a Mercedes making their way down this winding pit lane at Sonoma Raceway.
Yeah, a little bit more conservative, playing a little bit safer. You just got to look at the math and understand that and be sure that when you hit pit lane, it's right at the point of coming into the pit lane, you had to be at that moment in the race, 51.25 to go.
Of note, Ellis's pace isn't quite what it was when we were talking about CrowdStrike fastest laps about 10 minutes ago. He's dropped about a second in lap time over the past few laps, so maybe we have hit a point where, well, as I say that, he just reset the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race, so forget I said anything. Philip Ellis, yeah, a 1:32.282, doing exactly what he needs to do, taking advantage of his pace relative to the AMs, and now taking advantage to others on outlaps.
Look at the speed of the outlap. I know the tires are coming out of the ovens, but in years past, you wouldn't attack the first couple of corners there like Elliot Skeer did. That's just the racetrack and the grip that it's providing.
ST Racing. Samantha Tan giving over the car to the dynamo that is Neil Verhagen.
There was overlap. He had to give it up anyway. It's going to be Robbie Foley behind the wheel of that Turner Motorsports car. If there's any overlap from the fast lane, even by like a couple of inches, you have to give it up by the time you get to pit out.
That was awfully close to the ST Racing car getting a position in the pit lane, but not quite close enough. So they leave roughly the way they entered. These two actually with a bit of a gap back to the DXDT car that Smithson started. It's now Brian Sellers doing the driving duties.
And looking at the pit stop times, everyone was just outside that minimum 85 seconds. No one run a foul. If you are running a foul of that 85 seconds by up to 1 second, there's a penalty given to you post-race of a 10-fold. There's how close it was. Verhagen tried to get out to the outside lane, couldn't get it done. Foley stood his ground. Game on.
Now two of the top young American talents for BMW set to square off over the final 47 minutes of this race. But still, the strategy is yet to fully unfold because Philip Ellis...
Foley or Fully?
Fully is what I was trying to say. I was looking at Robbie Foley and it came out Fully, but you know what I'm trying to say. Philip Ellis continues to show the way. How much of a gap, though, can he build? And then, can Jeff Burton hold it? What a result that would be.
Different type of pressure. Totally different type of pressure for Jeff Burton. Here we see Philip Ellis heading up into turn 7. Just looking at the board, he can come in with literally 49 minutes and 59 seconds to go. So probably push it one more after this, I would think, then he'll have to hit pit lane.
So interesting. This is the only team that elected to make this strategy call. And we'll know in about 45 minutes whether or not it was the right one. And you know, maybe we should preface this by saying I'm not sure that simply it's win or nothing to determine whether or not it was the right call. Even a podium finish for Jeff Burton would be big. The last couple of years, there haven't been too many of them. So if they can even put themselves in a position to bring home a top 3, I'd call it a successful roll of the dice.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this. He can probably actually go another minimum 2 laps. 3 would be tight, but he's still got 5.5 minutes left to play with here. And that's all about the pit-in mark. It's not his pit box or when he gets out of the cars, when he hits pit lane, and where that timing line is. This is nervous time, though. This is where you do not want to see a yellow. Well, they don't need a yellow at any point from this part of the race all the way to the checkered flag here this afternoon. But certainly for Jeff Burton, he'd love to have a big gap to work with to settle in and take a little bit of that pressure off. And then it's going to be all about communication between Jeff Burton and the team to manage the gap.
You have to think, too, that with all the pros in the cars, the odds of a yellow in the second half goes down, right? So that's another element in favor of this DXDT strategy. This is interesting to watch here. This is what we were talking about earlier, where Colin Brown is second in Pro-Am, but he's got these 3 Pro Class cars that he has to contend with, and it does look like he might be losing a little bit of lap time relative to what he's capable of, chasing Bill Auberlen here in a battle that is not for class position.
Yeah, you pointed that out a little while ago, Ryan, as a great point. So he's got to fight his way through there to even try and chase after Jeff Burton when Jeff gets behind the wheel. It was about 4 minutes to go when Philip Ellis flew by the pit entry there, so he could do 2 more laps safely and still have probably a minute to spare to hit pit lane.
Ellis is still faster than any car on track. That just changed, actually. Elliot Skeer just came by and did a 32.5, so was a few tenths of a second quicker. But even this deep into the run, Ellis has the kind of pace that is maintaining the gap that he has built over the course of the first half of the race.
On board here with Neil Verhagen, Robbie Foley up ahead. 2 BMW factory drivers going hard at it here for position. This is for P4 in Pro-Am, P7 overall currently. As Neil alluded to in his chat with Amanda, first time here at Sonoma, not an easy place, but these young kids are so amazing how they can sit on a sim, and the correlation between a sim and the reality of the racetrack itself is so close these days. It really gives you a big jump start on learning a new circuit.
Last month, Neil was named to BMW's Gen 2K team. This is a little bit sobering for us that have a 1.9 at the beginning of the year of our birth as Ellis is in the pits. But this is a team exclusively for drivers born in the year 2000 or later, and shows you the youth movement in sports car racing these days. But here we go. Crucial moment here for DXDT Racing. Need to execute the pit stop. That is goal number 1. Phil Ellis will be handing over to Jeff Burton.
I think they played it safe there, just worried about maybe a safety car suddenly leaping out in front of them and slowing them down and not allowing them to get Philip Ellis out within that 50-minute maximum time. So I like that call as well. They've pushed it, but not to the point you're in jeopardy by a safety car suddenly jumping out in front of you.
Field plugs in. Out hops Philip Ellis. In goes Jeff Burton, who we heard from, 20 minutes or so ago. This could be the biggest 40-minute stint of his career.
Philip Ellis yet to be beaten on North American soil in 2024. 2 big wins at Daytona and Sebring, coming follow up by winning the opening round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge race here.
Pit stop so far looks routine. Driver change was picture perfect. Philip Ellis stepping away from that car with plenty of time to spare. The car's stationary, and that's usually a good sign. They need to get it fired up. And now we'll check the time as he heads to the pit exit line to see just how closely they were able to execute to that 85-second minimum down the pit lane.
Played it safe, just near 87 seconds, 86.9 in fact, so no need to cut it too tight. Just they're doing everything correctly.
This is the second-placed car overall, the leader in the Pro Class, Elliot Skeer, to give you some idea of the gap. Burton just left the pit lane. This is Skeer coming down the pit straight.
But the second-place runner in Pro-Am, Colin Brown, is about 18 seconds behind this 120 machine. So that's the sort of gap that Jeff Burton has got to work with.
The gap between Burton and Skeer is 36 seconds. It's another 11 seconds back to Zach Veach, who runs second in the Pro Class. Bill Auberlen, 7 seconds behind that. And actually, Bill lost the spot to Colin Brown, so Colin has moved forward slightly and now has just 2 cars between himself and his class leader, Jeff Burton.
I would guesstimate that Jeff Burton's got about a 2 second per lap margin of deficit that he can live with, then it's going to get tight. So that's going to be the key. I think Jeff Burton's got a lap, about 2 seconds a lap, or within 2 seconds of Colin Brown, who's given chase.
Philip Ellis was the star of the first half of the race. He gave Jeff Burton a 36-second lead. Let's hear from him now with Amanda.
And the team was happy that they executed a great pit stop there and said that's everything we need. 36 seconds was what you were able to build on P2 in class. Can the strategy work, Philip?
Say again, sorry?
Can the strategy work?
I mean, it can, yeah. Now I'm just hoping for no safety cars anymore. It was a bit of a shame that in the second lap, I think we had one immediately. Thankfully, it was quite short, so I could pull a gap again. But yeah, as you say, we're gambling a bit on the no safety car scenario, and then it'll be the exact opposite tomorrow where we gamble for the safety car. So fingers crossed that it stays green for now and Jeff brings it home.
Ahead of this race, what did you say to Jeff?
You know, not much. I think Jeff needs quite some laps still to get used to the new grip level we have now with the new tarmac. So it's a bit harder for him to extract all the lap time out of it, since you just have to push hard every lap. Because the last couple of years where we used to be here, it always used to be about tire management and, you know, feeling the car and being gentle on it. Now it's the exact opposite. It's just as hard as you can go for 40 minutes, and it's, I think, quite the challenge.
Great stint, Philip.
Thank you.
Well, the key factor is here, Jeff Burton has about a 40-second lead over the second place runner in Pro-Am, Colin Brown. We've got 38 minutes to go, and you're probably looking at about 25 laps maybe, so bring that margin down about 1.5 seconds. So that's going to be a big pressure situation for Jeff Burton to maintain that sort of delta to Colin Brown.
To win, yes, but to podium, I think it's a different story, and there have been only 2 podiums over the last 2 seasons for Jeff Burton. So again, at least from where I'm sitting, I don't judge this gamble based purely off whether or not they win the race. But if they can get in the top 3, in my estimation, I'm curious if the team would agree, but I'd call that a success.
Yeah. It's all about learning each other, early days, but I like the gamble. It's fun, gives us something to talk about, and as he said tomorrow, we need a yellow. We need a yellow. We need a little bit of a favor for it to work for tomorrow.
On board with the leader in the pro class, Elliot Skeer, who is scything into the deficit relative to the overall leader, Jeff Burton. Jeff's first lap at speed was a 137. Compare that to a 135 for Skeer the last time by. Drive-through penalty here for Racer's Edge. Zach Veach coming through. Not sure what that was for. PLS, pit lane speed, I'm going to guess is the acronym.
Yeah, it wasn't sure on minimum delta time. It was just too much speed either by Luca coming into the pit lane or by Zach leaving the box.
Well, that drops Zach way down in the overall orders and only cost the 1 position in class.
Again, that is controlled by a pit lane speed limiter button, so I know it's early days, maybe Zach didn't hit the right button leaving pit lane, but typically it's an overshoot on pit entry when that pit lane speed limit is exceeded, because the system can, you've still got to slow the car down enough for the electronics to then take over.
On board again with Neil Verhagen. Starting to put some pressure on Robbie Foley. This is 6th and 7th overall, 4th and 5th in class.
Just a quick update. I know it's early days for Jeff Burton, but that last lap was about 4.5 seconds slower than Colin Brown. That is not going to keep that lead in Pro-Am at that rate.
Down through the gearbox. Up over the curb. So much curb used by these BMWs. They have a reputation of being pretty easy up over curbs.
Great little battle here. And this is intense. They're both BMW factory drivers. They want the best for their teams, but they also want to stamp their mark a little bit for the manufacturer in terms of who is maybe the lead dog of, you got 3 actually. You got Bill Oberlin, who's still a BMW factory pilot. As he announced, he's just going to sign a new 3-year deal. That'll take him through 30 years of competition with BMW, successive years that is.
absolutely
and successful
remarkable
as well.
Yeah. And a career that dates back beyond that. And that's just his BMW career.
Well, it's so cool because it'll celebrate BMW's 50th anniversary next year, and then Bill's 30th with the brand for the following year.
My first note on Bill goes back to 1987. Sorry to say, that's a year before I was born. Sorry, Bill.
I think I was 3 or 4.
Yeah. You know, I'm watching this fight here, these two young American BMW affiliated drivers. It strikes me, I'm not sure how much they would have ever raced against one another. Other than the VIR one-off for Turner last year, Robbie was part of that lineup. And that was Neil's first weekend with ST Racing. Maybe at the 24 Hours of Daytona this year, maybe at Sebring this year, but that might be it.
Yeah, for sure. They don't know each other well, and that's a learning process as well. How aggressive is another driver? How do they deal with a situation like this? But they're both rock solid, can get the job done, and they're both chasing. They recognize if they can maintain this pace, they're going to leap up the board here, and they're fighting out for a potential podium here this afternoon.
We're about 2 or 3 laps away from having a battle for the overall lead. That's the pace at which Elliot Skeer is catching Jeff Burton. Colin Brown, each of the last 2 or 3 laps has been that car's fastest, so he is flying right now. But he is some 17 seconds behind Skeer at the moment. Then you've got to drop back 7 seconds to find Bill Oberlin. Then it's Adam Carroll and Robbie Foley and Neil Verhagen in that battle we've been watching. Here is Jeff Burton, though.
He's kept it clean. That's the important part, but they've got to talk to him. He's got to find a little bit more pace. Just gradually find the pace in this racetrack. You've got a ton of grip to play with because at the pace he's running in the Delta, he's now improved his lap time. He's now into the 36s. But guys like Carroll, Foley, Verhagen are running 33s and 34s, and at that pace, they will catch him before the end of this race for class position.
The communication from team to driver as Skeer approaches. It's so important, right? Because these are not cars fighting in the same class, and it's important that Jeff would know this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they'll talk him through the scenario. You're going to say you're going to be seeing that 120 car first. Don't fight him. Just let him go. Try not to lose any time. When he gets by you, just focus forward. See if you can hang on for a little bit. Try and learn something, because for Jeff Burton, he's learning this racetrack as a totally different cup of tea this year in terms of the grip level compared to what he's raced here before. So he's got to find that threshold without exceeding it and making that vital error.
On board with Elliot Skeer, whose 2024 started off in the limelight. If I'm not mistaken, was this not the team that Brad Pitt was embedded with at the 24 Hours of Daytona?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Special paint scheme. Sonny Hayes, excuse me. That's right. Part of the forthcoming Formula One movie. But this car was all painted up in a special livery. Sonny's name was on the car. That's Brad's character, I understand. So there was a lot of attention on Elliot Skeer and Adam Adelson in the build-up to the 2024 racing season.
I cannot believe how early these drivers can put the power down. I love that.
Did you see that? I think someone told Elliot he was on camera, and he gave it kind of a hang 10 sign to us. He's as cool as they come. Really, really impressed. I think the team liked that too. It's Adam Adelson, who had a great first stint watching on left-hand side of the screen. Big smile on his face. Phil Ellis, he's watching too. The gap is now only 1.6 seconds. First to second overall. Burton back in the 137s on that lap.
And Colin Brown, who's second in Proam, just ran a mid-32, so that's a huge delta, 3.5 seconds. Colin Brown is now 16 seconds behind Jeff Burton for the Pro-Am lead. There we go.
Change for the overall lead. Around comes Elliot Skeer, grabs the position away, and now sets sail, pursuing perhaps an overall win in addition to a debut Pro Class win for the Wright Motorsports team. Just 30 minutes to go. 1 hour down. We're just shy thereof. We talked about Elliot Skeer a little bit earlier either in this show or in the broadcast of the session that set the grid. It was technically free practice 2, but effectively served as qualifying for reasons not worth getting into right here. But this is a driver that looked like he was poised for greatness, looked like he was on a path to be the next great American Porsche factory driver, and then everything suddenly fizzled out. He's had to scrap and claw for opportunities, somehow got linked up with Adam Adelson. The two have become best friends and are a remarkably competent pairing when put together. They were good in the GT4 ranks, but they have been great in GT3.
Yeah, they really stepped up to another level, and we talk about relationships. I mean, you talk about Elliot Skeer being high on Porsche's radar. Back in 2015, he won the Porsche Cup over here in North America with Wright Motorsports, and that's the team he's currently competing with here today, of course. So Pat Long was kind of his mentor for a long time there, and it just seemed like he'd fallen off the radar a little bit, and then he gets this opportunity and he's grabbed it with both hands. And that pole position lap that he put together here this morning was simply sensational. He had a couple of cracks, had a couple of bobbles, had a little reset, and laid down 2 flyers that were both good enough for pole position. Just that's the sort of run that he can put together, and it's making everyone sit up and take notice.
Now we can start comparing and contrasting between the top 2 in the Pro-Am class. Jeff Burton, Colin Brown, no cars between them. The gap is down to 12.6 seconds at this pace. Colin Brown should be there in about 3 laps.
Yeah, and I think these drivers too, we're looking at Foley and Verhagen, Adam Carroll up in front of them. I think all 3 of those Pro-Am runners have the potential to maybe catch Jeff as well. So he's going to have to fight. He's going to have to dig deep here. He's going to hang on to what you said would be a successful day and a podium run.
What would your message be if you were coaching Jeff?
Well, you know, you can't force too much. He's run laps in the 36, mid 36 bracket, but he's got to find a couple of seconds. I'm not sure if he's going to achieve that within the stint here today. So I think they just got to learn to live and fight another day, but just have a solid run, build a little bit of confidence, take that forward to tomorrow for the start of the race, keep in touch with the pros who are going to be starting tomorrow, and give Philip Ellis a chance, because as he said, they need a yellow tomorrow. So if Jeff Burton can do a solid first stint tomorrow, he's not going to hang with those pros starting the lineup tomorrow, but if he can just keep it clean, give Philip Ellis at least a shouting chance.
The fight and the pursuit continues. Colin Brown, CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race the last time by. The gap is down to 7.2 seconds. In the meantime, though, this fighting duo here of Foley and Verhagen, they have caught Adam Carroll, who has not quite been on their pace over the course of this stint. That could slow this pack up a little bit. That would be a boon to Jeff Burton.
Yeah, both these BMWs have run fast laps, about a second quicker than the Mercedes right in front of them there. So, but you know, Adam Carroll's, he's going to fight hard as well. He recognizes that there's a podium spot on the cards here today, so he's not going to make life easy, and that may help Jeff Burton a little bit by the pace of these BMWs.
Absolutely. Lurking there, not too far back, is Brian Sellers. It's a recovery drive for that number 08 car. They looked like they might be in contention for a podium in the early part of this race within the Pro-Am class, but a little spin from Scott Smithson put them on the back foot. Sellers looking like he is recovering nicely. Gap is down under 3 seconds, though. First to second in Pro-Am. We'll keep an eye on that as we watch what is becoming a quartet fighting for class position here. Carroll, Foley, Verhagen, and Sellers.
Big week ahead for Brian Sellers in that group. They're going to do some testing next week at Sebring with the new Corvette GT3 machine. If it goes well, we anticipate a debut as early as Sebring in early May, so that's not too far away. So lots going on with these programs.
Foley will want to make quick work of Carroll if he can, but you're right, this is effectively for the final step of the podium at this stage within the Pro-Am class. In the meantime, it is here. These are the top 2 in Pro-Am, separated by a lapped car. Ross Schwest in the silver Mercedes, not part of the battle, but Jeff Burton now can look out that rearview mirror and see Colin Brown looming large.
Yeah, Paul Vallejo is going to be pushing here as well, so Colin Brown has to tread carefully here and just think about the big picture. Not sure whether Paul Vallejo was aware of the situation. He dives down the inside and clears Jeff Burton, and for Colin Brown, he's just going to try and get on the power here He'll probably make a move down into the brake zone into turn 11.
Here he comes, looking to the inside now. Burton starts to crowd down, in part to avoid the pit entrance there. Brown sweeps to the inside and easily takes the lead in the Pro-Am class with 25 minutes to go.
Okay, Jeff, just try and hang on to that CrowdStrike machine. See if you can learn something. Find a few tenths here. Give yourself half a chance to hang on to that podium spot.
My apologies, by the way. I think I said Raj Schwest, but it would be Aaron Povoleto in that number 50 car for Schwest Povoleto Racing. I want to give them credit. That is the only team in this paddock that had never done a live pit stop before. That was their first one. They weren't quite on the pace of the others looking at the result, and I think that's what dropped them a lap at one point. But nevertheless, that's a team that is learning a lot this weekend, drinking from the fire hose, and the veteran Aaron Povoleto making way for Colin Brown to play through.
Colin Brown now.
Hip check
that's
there.
tight.
Yep, that is Verhagen getting through on Foley. I wonder how that's set up. In the meantime, Brian Sellers smells weakness. He's trying to pounce now on the suddenly
Foley tries
vulnerable.
to get back. Look at him, gets to the inside. Verhagen takes that wide approach to that corner. Kind of a late apex where Foley likes to hug the inside. Almost opened up the door there for Foley to get back that position.
I wonder if Foley made a passing attempt that went wrong on the car ahead, on Adam Carroll, thank you. And that opened the door. Not entirely sure, just my guess, but nevertheless, it left him vulnerable, and Neil Verhagen needed no second invitation.
He's on the attack, and they'll know the math. The team will be telling them that the 91 car is up ahead. Keep doing what you're doing. You'll catch it before we see the checkered flag here this afternoon. Still 23 minutes plus on the board.
And to update Jeff Burton, that last lap back in the 37s. This battle pack here is running in the high 33s. Carroll in the Mercedes, you see out the windshield, on board with the Connecticut native Neil Verhagen.
So approach slightly different there. Carroll kind of dives over at that turn 2 apex a little bit sooner than Neil. He sets it up, float speed up over the top. Next corner, turn 4 is where he took advantage of Foley on the previous lap. As you said, I'm not sure if Foley was making a move on Carroll for that opportunity to exist. Wow, he floats in speed there. Up and over the crest of the hill before he slows it all down.
All of this is happening about 16 seconds behind Jeff Burton. Oh, Verhagen. Little juke to the inside, trying to fill the mirrors up.
Carroll's no slouch on the brakes, though, as he took that Mercedes in there really deep for the SS Racing operation.
Traditionally, that Mercedes maybe not as strong in a straight line as the BMW, but so nimble. We've seen that time and time again throughout the years. Back on board.
Love these onboard shots. Brake zones are so tiny now with the grip.
Burton had a big moment on that last lap. He ran a high 38, so that's several seconds off of the pace we've seen out of him. That now brings this fight just that little bit closer to him. And still 21 minutes left. This has to feel interminable for Jeff Burton, who's been trying to nurse the advantage handed to him by Philip Ellis and the DXDT team that used an alternate strategy, starting with their pro driver when the rest of the field elected to start their AM.
Yeah, this paddle's only about 11 seconds behind, though, so I think the writing's on the wall, but still great effort by everyone there at DXDT to give that 91 squad the best opportunity. Verhagen thinking about it, but Carroll really takes that Mercedes deep into that brake zone for turn 7. Carroll's got good pace here. It's not like he's compressing this to give Foley easy pickings on Verhagen once again. Sellers done a really nice job of rebounding after that little spin by his teammate Smithson earlier in this race.
Adam Carroll may not be a household name in the States. I think outside of a couple of IndyCar races he drove for Andretti, exactly, Mid-Ohio and Watkins Glen about a decade and a half ago. I'm not sure he's done a whole lot of racing stateside until this partial program with S's Racing here last year. But his resume is extensive, whether it's GTs or in single-seaters. This is not for class position, but this is Jeff Burton now with Bill Oberlin giving chase. Oberlin, second place car in the pro class. And Burton I thought he was going to make way. Certainly not under any obligation to. And there he will. Give room up the inside. Oberlin is through. That is for third overall.
Second in pro. Solid start for he and Choxy here today.
Back to this now. Carroll holds down the final podium spot in the Pro-Am class. That's in the Mercedes. Neil Verhagen not too far behind. After making the pass on Robbie Foley just a few laps ago, Foley with a bit of a moment there. He got out wide. And I think we had a close call earlier in the lap. This looks like Neil Verhagen taking a look, and yeesh.
That is a moment and a half. Adam Carroll does not want to give it up. Gets a little brush there right as he's fully loaded. Great car control.
That was an accident that just didn't happen. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we've seen him perform brilliantly in the British GT Championship over the years as well. So he's a real stud behind the wheel of one of these GT machines, despite his early career being mostly in single-seaters. Was a Formula One test driver for Jaguar, ran with their Formula E team. Samantha Tan has done her job here today, enjoying life, watching her teammate give chase here.
And these two just picking up right where they left off, fighting for podiums once again in this really competitive Pro-Am class. Some new faces, but also some returning stars, like the returning champions that they'll be up against.
This battle's now about 5 seconds behind Jeff Burton. Look at the difference in line and approach there. Verhagen again takes that big wide approach. That's what I call a classic late apex approach to the carousel there. Foley likes that inside hug. Feels there's more grip there. All of these drivers exploring and experimenting here with the new track surface.
And is it that surface that allows a greater variety of approaches to that corner specifically?
Absolutely, and they may all be equal. You know, if you look at the sector time, it may not be much between it, but you can approach it in a different way, whereas in years past, it's one line only will work, otherwise you're in trouble.
And Cal, the car you see in the distance, that is Jeff Burton. That is the erstwhile overall race leader, and we're seeing how this strategy plays out with under 17 minutes to go. The fight here in the Pro-Am class has just about arrived on the doorstep of Jeff Burton.
Well, the math didn't look good. As soon as we established what sort of pace everyone had after the driver exchange for all of the teams, it's going to be a long road for Jeff Burton and DXDT to hang on to this, but he's done a nice job in keeping it clean, driven a smart race. He'll have learned a lot here today, but here comes that snarling pack, and they're just going to be trying to identify for Adam Carroll, how aggressive does he get? I mean, typically you'd say take your time, but he can't afford to take his time and then suddenly see Verhagen pounce, so that may force the issue a little bit.
Exactly. Very interesting dynamic because, yes, these cars, all 5 of them are in the same class, but Burton is the only AM amongst them with 4 pros, seasoned veterans, all, despite the low age for a few of them.
Look at Verhagen looking to the outside. He's got to be careful, otherwise, no, he does the switchback, cuts to the inside, not close enough. Sellers can smell a podium here as well. He can take advantage of this situation if there's any argy-bargy.
Well, you said it. Verhagen looked wide, but then had to quickly cover off the inside because it left him vulnerable for an attack.
It's so difficult when you got someone right on your tail like Robbie Foley. You're trying to set up Adam Carroll here, and you got to be careful that Foley doesn't see an opportunity and sneak to the inside and have contact with you.
Carroll on those headlight flashers letting Jeff Burton know that he is coming, and he's got a train in tow.
Burton just did, I think, his fastest lap of the day. I went 36.2, so he's done a solid job here. Flashes across the line, another 36.5, but here they come.
Verhagen will try the outside again.
He is working that car over, trying to figure out a solution to this puzzle. Podium right in front of him, but will it be P3 or P2? If he can get around both of these Mercedes, he'll be up to second in Pro-Am.
This is a really good run for the S's Racing team. Let's make sure we give them some credit. Right now, Adam Carroll driving their Mercedes has Jeff Burton in the crosshairs. He goes wide. Here comes Verhagen. A big dive up the inside, and he'll grab the third spot away.
That was nice. That was nice. I don't think Adam Carroll expected it. And here comes Robbie Foley with a big run as well on Adam Carroll. He goes to the outside. Side by side with the BMWs. Can he tuck it back in? Carroll's going to force the issue here at Apex. Can't do anything about it. Brilliant opportunistic move by Robbie Foley there.
Carroll drops 2 spots to the 2 BMWs. Verhagen able to pounce first. Foley fights his way through. Now Brian Sellers will make an attempt to do the same. But now we watch here the fight for the spot here. Jeff Burton and Adam Carroll, Jeff Burton now and Neil Verhagen coming into turn number 11. Here comes Verhagen up the inside.
Foley will try and go with him, keep the pressure on that BMW. 2 BMWs now on the Pro-Am podium.
Yep. Brown continues to lead in the Pro-Am class. He is well ahead, about 38 seconds ahead, in fact, of this fight here. Both BMWs are through on Burton. Adam Carroll lining up the move next, but that's Brian Sellers is right in his tire tracks. Burton goes wide. That should open the door for the 2 Mercedes.
Yeah, he's been trying to hang tough, made his first mistake that we've seen here today, Jeff Burton, but keeps it on the racetrack, most importantly. He's just got to put all of this in his memory bank overnight, come back strong in the morning. Focus on a good opening stint, pray for a yellow, and see if Philip Ellis can make the magic happen in the second phase of the race tomorrow like you did early today.
Well, the DXDT strategy was contingent on limited yellows, if not no yellows. And I do wonder, had there not been the safety car, that would have given Ellis a little bit more time to build that much more of a gap, and maybe that puts the podium in play on that strategy.
Yeah, certainly could have been another 10 seconds or so to play with, which would have been significant. We'd have been seeing the same action, but maybe a little bit closer to the checkered flag. I don't think it really changed the day totally, but it would have certainly made it a little bit more exciting in terms of closer to the finish, maybe.
Well, these are the reigning champions in the Pro-Am class. It took them a couple of years to get it done. A big breakthrough 1 season ago. George Kurtz and Colin Brown. Here's George.
George, the guys in the booth were just talking about the strategy play that Philip Ellis and that team took to kick off race 1 here. Is that something that your team might consider at future events?
Well, I think you have to look at it. We have to see how it worked out. We took a conventional strategy today, and we're going to see how it worked out. Obviously, with Ellis, he had a big gap, and obviously Colin got in and was able to run him down. So I can tell you, I wouldn't want to be behind Ellis, and I'm sure Burton didn't want to be ahead of Colin. So at the end of the day, we're going to see what happens, but we're glad Colin is in the lead, and we'll see what shakes out at the end.
A big weekend for CrowdStrike, our event protected by CrowdStrike. I know it's a big corporate weekend for you guys as well. How do you separate boss man and race car driver?
Well, you have to context switch. We have a lot of our employees here, probably 200. It's a big CrowdStrike event for them, and then we've got a lot of our customers and prospects here. Everybody had a great time. We took them to some wineries, and they got to see race cars, and a lot of people have never really seen a race car that close or been involved in racing this way, so it's great for them, and hopefully we have lifelong fans coming out of this.
And in maybe 10 minutes they'll see you on the top step of that podium.
All right, well, let's not count our chickens before they're hatched, but we hope so.
Thank you, George.
He knows how this game works. He's seen how these things can change in the final 10 minutes, so he'll take nothing for granted at this stage. Battle continues here.
P4 in Pro-Am. Nice little battle continuing here with the Irishman Adam Carroll continuing to have that track position on Brian Sellers. Two BMWs taken off a little bit, which we anticipated based on their fast laps of the day, that they had a bit more pace, but Adam Carroll certainly provided a great fight for them to get through.
You made reference to it earlier. DXDT set to go testing with their new Corvette. This is the program that will shift from the Mercedes to the Corvette as soon as Sebring. That's the goal, at least, the next round of the championship. But started with Old Faithful here, and they've got a lot of laps behind the wheel of this car over the last few years.
Well, certainly the information flow, I would assume, was strong with Erin Verhagen, who's the team manager there at DXDT. Her brother is Tommy Miller, who's a Corvette factory driver and actually did all of the development on the new Corvette GT3 machine. So I'm sure he was keeping her well informed as to the progress of that, and I think it's an exciting step. It's going to be exciting to see one, maybe two of those cars in our championship. There's talk of maybe a Ford GT3 Mustang being here as well before the end of the year, so exciting times ahead.
It'd be great to reignite the pony wars of years past, Chevy versus Ford. Although I guess Camaro Mustang really was the battle back in the day. We'll take Corvette Mustang, though. It's got a nice ring to it. That's Will Hardiman you see in the inset, who started the number 19 silver and blue Mercedes for Esses Racing.
It's a really solid day for that group.
I agree.
You know, kind of dipped their toe in the water last year and had a solid season, but this is, I'd say, their strongest performance to date.
Of course, this program will evolve after this weekend, too. It switches to an M-class entry after this event in Sonoma, with Alan Metney set to join Will Hardiman. Alan's name should be familiar to you if you're used to watching, especially Porsche single-make racing, but he's done some other sports car racing in the past. But a big step for him to come to Fanatec GT.
I'm sure they're looking forward to Coda, their home circuit. Round 3 of our championship chase.
I believe both drivers will be Texans, and Allen, in fact, is from Austin itself. So that would be a very special weekend for him. And the team is based not too far from the track, too, if I'm not mistaken.
So Sellers continuing to hound Adam Carroll, but hasn't found a chink in his armor yet.
In some ways, sorry, Cal, you know, we saw the two BMWs make the move, but they're going to have strengths in different areas of the track relative to the Mercedes. Now we're seeing two identical Mercedes-AMG GT3s that are going to have the same strengths and weaknesses, and in some ways that makes this battle that much more difficult for Brian Sellers in particular to find an edge somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I've just been thinking about this, we saw the DXDT operation kind of struggle to really maximize the performance of the Mercedes, certainly compared to the CrowdStrike entry, for example. But you think about Ellis's performance here today, and certainly Sellers here has shown great pace as well. I think they've really been able to step up their program a little bit in the offseason and come out of the box stronger this year.
Yeah, I agree. That was eye-opening what Philip Ellis did in the opening stint, and he no longer has the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race, but he's not far from it. Colin Brown has snagged that title, having turned a 132.1, but yeah, certainly the 132.2 that Philip Ellis did at his stint, and that came late in the stint, let's not forget.
It did, yeah.
Is an encouraging sign for the pace of that car and for this team moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some really juicy battles that we've seen here today. I think they're going to continue tomorrow. A different dynamic, as we said, with the 91 squad, with their strategy that they had. And we're going to be certainly focused on Philip Ellis for the second half of that race in terms of the gaps and how much progress he can make back up through that field.
The job is harder, I would say, for him, though, tomorrow, because he is going to have to cut his way through the pros in the pro class, and that is not an easy task.
No, even if you got a few tenths on someone, actually finding a way through is difficult. So they need a lot of help. They need a yellow at the right time. They need a reset, and but they'll be giving it everything. Meanwhile, Elliot Skeer here, back on board with him, our overall and pro leader. Love the color scheme on this Wright Motorsports. Like got a bit of a Lotus flavor to it.
Yes, I could see that.
Yeah. What's pretty cool, you see that double yellow stripe. It's actually got all of the circuit configurations embedded on top of that. Hard to see from a distance, but really pretty race car.
That team certainly knows its way around a Porsche. Many, many years of success for the Cincinnati area-based team, Batavia, Ohio, Wright Motorsports. A couple of cars a little bit further down the order, fighting though for position here with Tom Sargent fighting here with Aaron Povaledo.
Yeah, it's for deep in the pack, but these drivers are running lap times about a second off the pace of the leaders, so this is super impressive. This young Aussie, Tom Sargent, made the big move with the team that he ran with over in Australia to run in the Porsche Carrera Cup, finished second in the championship to, it was Riley Dickerson who dominated the year and won the title, but nonetheless, they shared a shop with DXDT at a certain point last year, and that's where Tom got to meet some of the DXDT personnel. That gave him the shot at the 8-hour Indy. And with his performance there, I think that got noticed within the paddock, and that related to the opportunity he's got here with Kyle Washington.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that start at the Indy 8-hour is the only GT3 start between these two drivers. It's certainly Tom's only one, and I don't think Aaron Povaledo has made a GT3 start either. So these are two guys still feeling this out a little bit in the early stages of the season. Testing to make sure the headlights work. Can confirm.
I think young Tom Sargent has shown a lot of potential. He's loving this opportunity that he has. And I think with GMG, they're a top pro effort. Kyle Washington is improving his game weekly, really, because he's running so many different championships and learning the craft. So it'll be fun to see how they progress through the season.
Inside of the final 3 minutes, Race Vision powered by AWS. This graphic was all 91 Philip Ellis when we showed it to you in the first stint, and now, yeah, it's all CrowdStrike. It's all Colin Brown. What a performance to snag the fastest sector times in each of the 3 sectors, plus, of course, commensurate with that, the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race.
But it's close. I mean,
sure.
Ellis has got to be within a sniff of those because he's only a 10th off his fastest lap. So Mercedes certainly showcased. We've seen this so many times with this championship, and when you look at the different brands and who performs better where, it just seems like that Mercedes is in its sweet spot all of the time. You know, just great downforce, great under the brakes, very compliant, can typically eat up a lot of the curbs on certain circuits where that'll give you an advantage. Everyone knows the car that can painting it so well, got a nice notebook to work with.
And when so many of the manufacturers roll out frequent updates and Evo kits for their cars, the lifespan of this Mercedes-AMG GT3, it dates back going on 10 years, and there's only been the one Evo for this car in that time frame.
They got it right, that's for sure.
Yes. Looks like there'll be 2 laps to go. He crossed the line with about well, he could slow up actually, so don't quote me on that, but it was really marginal whether or not the white flag would come out on that last lap. And that was, but that was Colin, not Elliot, so never mind.
Yep.
Scratch that. This is the overall leader. And I don't think he could back up quite enough to make that a viable play here late in the race, but just over a minute to go. What a great way to start the season for these two. Elliot Skeer and Adam Adelson. We heard from Elliot at the top of the show talking about step up in class and now recalibrating a little bit to start thinking about overall wins and not think about just the class wins, especially with a relatively small pro class this year. Very under control, nothing hurried for Elliot Skeer, and for good reason. 15 seconds is his closest pursuer overall. Colin Brown 27 seconds back to Bill Oberlin, who's third overall, second in class, as they come to the white flag here at Sonoma.
When we're on board with these race cars right now, it's almost to me like the audio and the visual is out of sync, because I can't believe how quickly they go back to power in turn 11. The grip that has got coming off there, just sensational.
Well, the track record times indicate, you better believe it.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, it's for real.
Yes, it is real, and it is spectacular. Leaders in the Pro-Am class, they wrapped up the championship at the Indy 8 Hour 1 year ago. Colin Brown, George Kurtz on the precipice of backing it up with another race win to start 2024. This duo has been so successful over the years, and it's a relationship that dates back well before they ever drove together competitively. Colin Brown was George Kurtz's coach early on, and that has transitioned into a wonderful partnership in multi-driver formula. Back on board with Elliot Skeer, who is cruising. It's the slightest of bobbles there at the exit of the S's. No sense pushing too hard into the chicane. And now just a few corners left to negotiate before he and Adam Adelson will start the season with a race win. One more time into the hairpin. On this, the final lap of the first race of the 2024 season. Domination for Wright Motorsports. Elliot Skeer and Adam Adelson kick off the season with a comprehensive win here at Sonoma Raceway. Colin Brown and George Kurtz will kick off their title defense in the Pro-Am class with a win of their own as the CrowdStrike by Riley Mercedes flashes under the checkered flag. And now we wait to see who will complete the class podiums. Across the line, a number of cars taking the checkered flag. Aaron Povolato down in 10th.
Carroll's hung on there.
Yeah.
For P4, it's not a podium result, but every position at this level with these pros is important. They're going to keep digging deep here, but Adam Carroll's done an excellent job here of keeping Brian Sellers behind him through the last 10-15 minutes of this race.
Best result yet for this S's Racing team. Adam Carroll will fend off the challenge from Brian Sellers and come home in the 4th spot in class, 6th overall.
This really showcases the problem for Philip Ellis potentially tomorrow. You can have a fast car like Brian Sellers did, but you kind of get stymied here. And with these GT3 cars, you know, you get a little bit of aero wash. Jeff Burton now finishes off his stint. Nice job. That's a solid day. I know we'll be disappointed to have the lead of this race. Only 3 car had a solid run bar that pit lane penalty.
Yeah, I do have to wonder where they would have ended up if it weren't for that. But if nothing else, valuable seat time for Zach Veach and Luca Mars, both racing that car for the first time here this weekend with limited testing in the build-up to the season. Let's go ahead and take a look at the provisional race results. Adelson and Skeer victorious overall and in class. 14 seconds the gap over the Pro-Am winners, Colin Brown and George Kurtz. Varun Choksi, Bill Oberlin. Great debut for Varun on the podium in his first ever GT3 race.
Really solid, yeah. I mean, the team talked about his potential, and he showed it here today on his debut. Backed up by the pro, Bill Oberlin. They'll be happy with that. 2nd place in pro and an overall podium on their debut together.
Another debutant on the podium, Justin Rothberg there, 5th overall, 3rd in class. Robbie Foley did put on a show for us a couple of times. He and Neil Verhagen sparring for position throughout the course of their stints.
So close together, the Verhagen and Foley separated by 300ths of a second on their fastest lap, so very evenly matched, and curious to get a debrief on what happened there over in turn 4.
And down there in 8th, what a great opening stint from Phil Ellis. From pole, built a gap that was up around 40 seconds at one point. Trying to nurse it home was Jeff Burton. Ultimately couldn't quite extract the pace to do so, but still a nice solid day. A learning day, and a day on which DXDT flexed a little bit of muscle. Philip Ellis showed what they were capable of. Down at the bottom, You see Sabo and Lee, their day went wrong on the opening lap and never got a chance really to show us what they were capable of. But hopefully tomorrow that will be a change. On board here with Elliot Skeer, who pulls into victory lane, something he did on a number of occasions last year as this duo finished second in the Proam Championship, picking up 6 wins, 7 podiums in class, but now an overall win and a win in the pro category for Skeer and Adelson after a Pro-Am campaign in 2023.
That was a rock solid day, that pole position run he put in. He'll start from the front tomorrow, just as he finished today.
Yeah, that's right. And that sends a warning shot across the bow of the rest of this field. Wright Motorsports, a perennial championship contender in GT racing. Appears that nothing has changed with the flip of the calendar to 2024. Elliot Skeer taking his time getting the radio
quick at everything
earplugs
else,
out.
but not this.
Yes. Let's hear from him now with Amanda Busick.
We're over by podiums with Elliot Skeer, and it was a round of applause from all the fans here for the clap for Elliot. And I'm sure Adam's going to join you here just shortly, but that stint, Elliot, you got in and just went after it. I think it was 14 seconds by the end of that. You guys moved up to the pro class, and I see that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Championship or bust for this team?
No, definitely. That's why we test. That's why we go hard in the practices and truly get everything we can out of it. The Wright Motorsport team don't know any different than that. And in a weekend like this with so many variables, it paid off. They gave us an unbelievable car. Adam did everything he could on that stint, right? Holding off Luca Mars is awesome. And it made my job as easy as it could be. I just go out there and push and manage and get all the data we can, and just could not be more proud of this team. It's been a good year so far, and we're just going to keep it rolling.
Well, I think we can see your teammate coming here up, and as he gets the round of applause as well from the fans here. And Adam, you guys back up last year with now a win in the pro class. You go back to Indianapolis. Redemption in that coming after a championship?
Well, I wouldn't say quite yet. I mean, there's a long way to go in the season, but I really like the way we started, and he drove great. I knew that I had to get around Luca early because he's got some real pace, even though this is his first year in GT3, and it's really impressive. And it was really good racing. He kept me honest, but was able to keep it where I put it, and this guy was flawless in the end. So.
Teammate gave you some good props on the Mars battle. Well, as we move over to our Pro-Am winners, now we know that George Kurtz didn't want to count his chickens at 10 minutes to go, but now it's yours, and in front of all this crowd that's here from CrowdStrike as well. Just a milestone weekend for you, George. What was it like for you?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's always great to be able to win a home race, and we had so many guests and CrowdStrikers here. So we didn't want to count our chickens before they hatch because we've seen a lot of things happen at the end, but the CrowdStrike Rally guys gave us a fantastic car. I put my head down and, clicked off the laps, gave it to this guy. And, it was that off strategy, and he was able to reel in Burton and come in P1. So always a pleasure to drive with this guy.
George Kahn talks about that off strategy. I'm sure that you got in, and there might not have been a concern for you, but how fun was it being in the position of pursuit?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, obviously there was quite a lot of cars that I wasn't sure if they were laps down or where they kind of fit in, but just put my head down. George did a great job in that opening stint. I mean, when you have a race like that with, a yellow early but then nothing else, his stint sort of, in a way, went up against what Burton was going to do, and mine went up against what, Ellis was doing. So even though we were off strategy, we were sort of on the same strategy in a way since it was fully green. So super important. Great job by him. Awesome to win in front of these CrowdStrike guests. I mean, what a weekend for us so far. Hopefully we can keep it going and, take it home tomorrow.
It's the opposite tomorrow. Will that be in mind? As you know, Philip will have that second stint.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think certainly SRO kind of threw a wrench in the mix for everyone, and it's going to be exciting to see what people do throughout the season and, whether it works or doesn't work. Obviously, we kind of just went, hey, it worked good last year. We won the championship doing it that way. We're just going to keep carrying it over. And, yeah, I mean, great pit stops by the guys. All those little things matter. I mean, essentially, we had that early yellow, but the rest of it was all green, so it sort of washes out in the end, I think. Good pit stops, good strategy, all those things came into play, and just super proud of these CrowdStrike Rally guys. What an effort.
CrowdStrike, your Proam winners here in race 1.
Reigning champions, starting the season with a race win. Fantastic stuff from that duo. As we've come to expect, those are the cars that piloted their drivers to wins in the opening season, or race of the season. And I think we have a chance to look back on race number 1 of the 2024 campaign here in Sonoma Raceway. Beautiful weather, beautiful day. Great way to get the season underway. Race number 1 began with Philip Ellis on the Rover pole. Big move up the inside. This was a crucial moment right at the very beginning. Wright Motorsports up into 2nd overall, seizing the lead within their class as well. Nice clean start for most of the field. Ellis was able to scamper away, but there was a yellow flag early in the going, Calvin, and that may have scuppered the off strategy of a couple of these different teams. Well, big moment there for the 93 Racers Edge machine. Close call on pit lane here, too.
Very much so. Verhagen leaps out of his pit box, and Foley is right alongside him. Foley got the mark and held on for many laps, but this was the key moment in the race. Elliot Skeer catches Jeff Burton for that overall lead and a class win. This is turn 4. Great move there by Verhagen to stuff it down the inside of Foley. Little rubbing, but that's all fair and square. This was tight. Look at this one.
Oh, such a close call between Verhagen and Adam Carroll. Ultimately, this was the move, though, that resulted in the position. Verhagen able to get through. Robbie Foley would follow through moments later. Ultimately, though, the final step of the podium in Pro-Am changed right here when Jeff Burton relinquished the spot. But the race winners in race 1 of 2024, Wright Motorsports gets the victory.